A huge warm welcome to Art Gallery Explorer, the vlog that explores and celebrates the London art scene and sometimes ventures outside as well, as I have done today, to the beautiful university city of Oxford. Coming up. Yeah, art lovers, I'm excited about this one because Anselm Kiefer is one of my favourite contemporary artists, and he is 80 years old this year. And so the venerable Ashmolean Museum in Oxford has put on a show focusing on his early works. Now, Anselm Kiefer was born in 1945, and even his birth is a stuff of legend. He was born in a basement of a hospital, and while he was being born, his house was bombed. He grew up in a bomb-ravaged, destroyed West Germany. So it's not surprising that Kiefer's early work explored this Nazi past and also wider issues of German identity, bearing in mind the history that Germany had gone through just before his birth. This is going to be one of 3 vlogs on Anselm Kiefer this year that I'm planning, because he's also showing at White Cube Mason's Yard and the Biggie at the Royal Academy, where his work is paired by one of his heroes, Vincent van Gogh. So stay tuned for those. But today it's all about works from 1969 to 1982, with, I'm led to believe, a smattering of newer works added in as well. So I'm really intrigued to see the works in this show, which is on until the 15th of June. It's £16-ish to get in, £16.20 I think, £18 with a donation. So come and join me as we head inside. I'm going to semi-narrate this show actually, putting out some core themes from some core works, but also letting the music and the works speak for themselves at certain points. As you can see here, before entering the main bit of the show, we're confronted with 3 newish works which display how Kiefer is working as an artist today. The first work that we see is a photograph relating to Kiefer's occupation performances in 1969, when as a young art student he performed the band Sieg Heil Salute in historically and culturally charged locations across Europe. As you can see from this stark image, the saluting man, the ghostly trees and the wire fence evoke tremendously powerful imagery of the Nazi regime. It's important to note that when performing these works, Kiefer is not identifying with fascism, he's confronting Germany's painful past. He's role-playing his ancestors and asking himself and his viewers uncomfortable questions about what did you do under Nazi rule? And maybe as well, what would you have done, what would I have done if I'd been born 20 years earlier? Kiefer found his father's World War II Wehrmacht overcoat in the loft and put it on for this self-portrait, which both protests against the country's attempt to hide from its past, but also obviously mocks the Nazis and mocks Hitler. These works, also in the first room, have been interpreted by the exhibition as humorous references to the rebirth of figurative painting in the 1970s in Germany. In the post-war period, the dominant trend had been for conceptual and abstract art because it was as far removed from the Nazis' classical art tastes as it's possible to be. These works are inspired by artistic instruction manuals on how to paint, how to draw a dancer in a step-by-step lesson, or how to paint a nude. In the early 1970s, Kiefer began producing woodcuts, an incredibly Germanic art form that stretches back for centuries, and he uses the artistic medium as kind of like a symbol, if you like, of Germanness. These woodcuts were inspired by a 1935 publication which connected 200 figures through history in order to legitimize National Socialism. So we see Albrecht Dürer, Friedrich Nietzsche, Adolf Hitler himself, and Kiefer is investigating German cultural history and how it led to the popularity of the Nazis. Similarly, the portraits in this collage are taken from a National Socialist era publications, and they show writers and philosophers like Kant and politicians like Otto von Bismarck. And here Kiefer is attempting to unmask the Nazi appropriation of historical figures as propaganda, and a fire at the centre of the composition surrounded by snakes and concentric circles symbolises transformation. These works interrogate the relationship between Poland and Germany, and the horse symbolises the last great charge of the Polish cavalry in 1939 in response to the Nazi invasion. Kiefer's landscapes are consciously part of a long tradition in German art, which links the landscape to both symbolising the universal but also to individual feelings, linking to Romanticist painters like Caspar David Friedrich. But also the exhibition claims that his paintings of watercolours of landscapes have multiple resonances, often tackling complex themes such as how to extricate art endorsed by the Nazis from being permanently and unfairly tainted. These are some of the most beautiful works in the exhibition and show a very intimate, smaller scale to Kiefer's work overall. Well, art lovers, I hope you enjoyed that exploration of the Anselm Kiefer early work show from the Ashmolean Museum. As a self-proclaimed Anselm Kiefer fan, I thought it was a decent show. And I brought you pretty much every work that's on the walls, although do be aware there are binders as well that you can look through of examples of other works. And I always obviously say that if you can get along and support the museum and also see the works with your own eyes, that's always better. But I put up every work for those of you who aren't able to visit this exhibition. Maybe you live overseas. I often think about these works in terms of the good, the bad and the beautiful. And if we start with the good, two things really struck me Firstly, in terms of the good, it was important and timely to see how Anselm Kiefer has been at the forefront of confronting his country's Nazi past, both directly and unsubtly, but also with increasing nuance. We have to remember that he was part of a first generation of artists to do this, to turn their artistic eye on the country and how it had been in the 1930s and 40s. And as a result, as you can imagine, his works were incredibly controversial at the time. They caused a huge stir, but they were very important. And I say timely because I've seen over the last month, as you might have done, a South African and then an American flirting with the Sieg Heil, the Nazi or fascist salute. And both of these people who have done that very publicly as part of American political discourse did not have to live, as Kiefer did, through the consequences, the rottenness and hubris of fascism. So they almost appear, when you've seen this show, as schoolboys kind of flirting with something they don't fully understand. I also, on a much more artistic note and less political note, love seeing the Kiefer's use of colour and also his watercolour landscapes especially. These were much more intimate in scale. Today, when you think of Kiefer's modern work, it's A, monumental, B, semi-abstract, and C, often the colour I associate it with this kind of beige muddiness. These were beautiful. There were lots of beautifully coloured works, and there were some beautiful uses of colour in his works, in these early works, and also some really intimate scale as well. These were kind of more domestic in scale, so I really got a lot out of that. In terms of the bad, there was nothing terrible about this show as well. As I said, it was a decent show. I wasn't convinced by the decision to have 3 later work as the first thing you see when you enter the gallery. They seem to me a bit like a red herring, if you like. It would have been much more powerful to have heroic symbols confronting the viewer, maybe on its own in that first gallery, because it's so shocking to us as modern viewers. And if the later works needed to be shown, maybe show them at the end. But I think that was maybe chosen for a logistical reason. I'm not 100% sure. Secondly, be aware that all of these works come from the Hall Foundation, a big American foundation which has 5,000 plus works by artists such as Gil Baslitz, Barbara Kruger, Kiefer obviously, as well as having 2 museums, one in Vermont and one in Germany. And as a result, this isn't a fully comprehensive view of his earlier works. There are works missing which I remember enjoying from the big Royal Academy show, like, for example, Winter Landscape, which is held in the Met's collection. So all of this comes from the Hall collection, but I'm not saying that's a terrible thing. I'm just saying it's not as comprehensive as it could be. I'm very grateful that the Hall Foundation have worked with the Ashmolean to bring this show to Britain, because it's a real treat and I got a lot out of it. In terms of the beautiful, I'm going to choose 3 works. The firstly is this one, entitled A Forest. It's a watercolour. It's very simple, it's very beautiful, and it's about Kiefer reclaiming this very Germanic landscape from the Nazis. Obviously, the forest has been used in German art, in literature, in the Brothers Grimm folk tales, for example, and so it's just a very quiet, small work. And on a personal level as well, one of my favourite works in the Ashmolean is Uccello's Hunt in a Forest. So I saw a link to that, but that's just a little personal link. I obviously went to see Uccello, having been to see this show. The second one I'm choosing is the Ich Du series of oil paintings on canvas, again small in scale, and they are just all about reclaiming landscapes for the personal, for the interior, by scrawling messages to his first wife Julia, to his son Daniel on them. These are really beautiful works, and some of them are just exquisite in terms of colour as well. And thirdly, I'm going to choose a woodcut. I think Brunhilde Gran. I'm sorry if I'm pronouncing the second word wrong. This is on a much bigger scale, but it was incredibly dramatic, and I love the technique used to produce this. So I did enjoy the show overall. It comes recommended, and I'm going to give it a 7.5 out of 10. I think that £16 without a donation is good value. Obviously, you can explore the wonderful art collection at the Ashmolean, as well as archaeological collections. So yeah, if you can get to Oxford, go along. And remember, you can make a day of it in Oxford by also visiting the Museum of Modern Art, the Christchurch Picture Gallery, and many of the Oxford colleges, which have works on display at certain times of year as well. The show's on until the 15th of June. It will be on Kiefer's birthday on the 8th of March when he turns 80. So maybe you want to go on that day to raise a toast to him. But overall, thank you ever so much for watching. If you enjoyed this work, do check out the link to my Anselm Kiefer vlog, which had new works. It was an amazing show from White Cube Bermondsey. And do stay tuned for many more reviews of shows back in London coming up in the near future. Thank you for watching.